report. Hanging at the fish report. Hanging at the fish report. Hanging at the fish report. For your latest news in high school sports, tune in to the fish report. Don't need no bed, don't need no pull. When you tune in to the fish report. Hanging at the fish report. Hanging at the fish report. You got Craig and TK and Heather D. Tune in at the fish report.
Coming to you live from Studio F in Russia, Ohio. It's the Fish Report Live Show with your hosts, Craig Fissinger and Ken Francis.
Tune in to the fish report.
Welcome, folks, to another Fish Report Live. Thanks for joining us. I'm Craig Fissinger. That is Ken Francis. We're your co-host. Back in our sound room tonight, two guys we affectionately refer to as TK and Heavy D. We'll be joining those two guys here in just a little bit. And Ken, another fun night on FRL. Lots of SCAL girls and boys basketball to talk about, and we're going to be talking about an old gym and a piece of history that officially closed on Monday night.
Yes, we will. Really looking forward to the show tonight, Craig. We're going to preview some of the girls' tournament draw coming up this week. You know, kind of look at the seeds again, see where we think everybody's going to fall. Look at the standings in the girls' basketball league as well as the boys, Craig, which, you know, both these leagues right now starting to take some definite shape. Some big games coming up again this week, and really looking forward to our interview tonight. Craig, we're going back into the archives. We're going to talk to former Jackson Center basketball star Sheriff John Lenhart, current Shelby County Sheriff. Going to get his view on some of these old gymnasiums, Craig. He was the 1963 state runner-up and, you know, very successful player back in his day, Craig, but he's brought a lot to this community, Shelby County, Jackson Center in itself, and just a great guy. Really looking forward to that interview.
Yeah, I talked to him a little bit on Monday night on the telephone, and he's got a lot to say about those old gyms and about some history, so looking forward to getting to that interview. But before we do, Ken, just like we do here every week on this show, we have our weekly poll question, and tonight's question has to do with those old gyms.
Yes, it does, and we're going to ask our viewers out there, and this is going to be a little more catered to our older viewers tonight, Craig, but which old Shelby County gym was the toughest to win in for the visitors? Was it the Botkins gym, the Fort Loramie gym, the Jackson Center gym, which we just previously talked about, or the Rushi's gym that we affectionately referred to it as the Cracker Box over there at Rushi's? So I think these gyms were all Cracker Boxes, Craig. They were a lot of fun, just a lot of great history there. So our viewers tonight, choose one of them let us know which one was really tough to win in.
I think that Botkins gym, was that the kitchen? Is that what they referred to?
That was the kitchen. You're right. That was the kitchen. So
they had a lot of neat nicknames and a lot of history there. It's sad to see some of those close down, but we'll talk more about that a little later in the show. If you're watching us on the Fish Report Live page right now, you can help us answer tonight's poll question by scrolling down, clicking your answer, and checking the results. If you're watching us on NK Telco or GameFace Ohio, we will have those results for you at the end of the show. All right, Ken, well, let's get things started talking a little girls basketball. And like you said, getting towards the end of the regular season, tournament draw coming up this weekend. Let's see where those regular season results are at, where the standings are at right now.
Well, Craig, like you mentioned, Shelby County League standings right now. Jackson Center at top, sitting at 8-1. Fort Loramie at 7-2, and Russia just a game back, also at 7-2. So it's turned into a three-team race. All three of those teams, Craig, got some really tough games yet to play the rest of the season. Craig, I think they're going to be your top three seeds in the Sydney sectional, hands down. And you know, it's just been a very, very tough league this year. You look at those overall records there. You know, Botkins, middle of the pack. 5-5 in the league, but 12-6 overall. You got a very good, respectable Anna team there. Only 3-7 in the league, 8-10 overall. So very competitive, great balance again this year in Shelby County League girls basketball.
Well, you mentioned those top three teams in the Shelby County League being the top three seeds in the tournament. Of course, that's been the case the last couple years. You've had Jackson, Russia, and Fort Loramie as the top three seeds. Fort Loramie's actually had I believe, a 4-year streak at number one. Do you think that continues?
You know, Fort Loramie, Coach Siegel's got a great team again this year. They're young. They've really gotten better as the seasons went on. I don't think they're going to be the 1 seed, Craig. They're sitting there at 7-2 in the league, 12-5 overall. I think Rushia's going to be the beneficiary of getting some extra games in. They've got 15 wins already. I know, some people say, well, who did they play? Who did they beat? When it comes to this seeding, a lot of these coaches, they look at Rushi at 15-4. That's a lot of wins. That's a really good record. I'm going to vote them ahead of Lormy. And plus, Rushi beat Lormy head-to-head. But on the other hand, Jackson Center beat Rushi twice. So, Jackson probably going to get that 1 seed. If I had to look at it right now, Craig, if I was voting, I would probably have to say Jackson 1, Rushi 2, Fort Lormy 3.
And then possibly Bakken slipping in there for that 4 seed.
And Bakken slipping into the 4th spot.
Okay, very good. Very good with that. And, we'll look forward to finding out what happens on Sunday. Of course, that voting was taking place all week. Some votes may already be in already, but we'll find out officially how those brackets break down on Sunday. All right, let's jump ahead and talk a little boys SAAL action. Again, they're a week behind the girls, but their tournament draw is coming up in a couple weeks. We talked about that last week, I believe, a little bit. Let's look at the regular season standings, Ken, and see how the boys are doing.
Well, when you look at the overall league standings, Craig, you got Rushi sitting atop the league alone with just 1 loss, 8-1 overall in the league. Fairlawn and Fort Lormy just a game back at 7-2. So very similar to the girls. You've got 3 teams there that are battling it out. Overall, Rushi at 13-4. Fairlawn playing fantastic basketball right now at 14-2, and Fort Lormy obviously a very good team as well at 13-3. So 3 really, really good teams are sitting at the top. But don't count out Jackson Center here to play spoiler. They've had kind of a disappointing season, Craig. From a league standpoint, overall they're 10-5, which is very good. They've got a big game at Fairlawn on Friday night. Rushi travels to Bakkens, Craig. That's not going to be an easy one either. Bakkens always plays Rushi tough, especially over there. Fort Lormy and Houston will tangle as well. So we'll preview those games here in just a minute, but. I look at this league standings right now, Craig, a long way to go. Even though, each of these teams only have 3 league games to go, some really big games and a lot can happen.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You mentioned those Friday night games, and let's preview those games. Let's bring in our sound room guys here right now and talk about those games. And that first one you mentioned was the Houston at Fort Lormy game. Ken, I'll ask you about that one. The first time these 2 teams played back on December 23rd, actually, Fort Lormy got out to a 26-0 lead that first quarter. Went on to win pretty easy, 62-29. What do you like about the Redskins right now?
Well, Craig, they're playing. They came off the drubbing they took from Fairlawn. Just a little over a week ago, and they last weekend they came back and they won a couple games. They're a good team. They've got size. They've got good guards. They penetrate well. They shoot well. So Fort Lormy is going to be a very sound team this whole postseason, and I think they're going to be too much for Houston Friday night. Although Coach Francis, I guarantee, is going to have his kids fired up. They're going to play hard. They've played hard all year, and they're going to go out there and do everything they can do to keep the game close.
Well, guys, I like Fort Lormy in this game easily, too. I like to play with Tyler Siegel lately. Actually, that first time they played against Houston, he had 17 points. He almost had a double-double on Saturday night against a good Fort Recovery team, a Fort Recovery team that suffered their 4th loss in a row, but nonetheless a decent Fort Recovery team. I look for another good game out of him on Friday night. And although the Redskins do have a tough game coming up on Saturday, guys, they play Marion local, so you don't know if they're looking past maybe this Houston game a little bit or not. I'm sure Coach Britton's got them, thinking about Friday night, but how kids can be sometimes, and they may be looking forward to probably a tough matchup on Saturday.
Yeah, that will be a tough matchup. Marion local's got some size to contend with Fort Lormy's presence inside, and so yeah, that'll be a very good basketball game. And but like you said, look for Lormy to be a little bit too much for the Houston Wildcats on Friday night.
All right, well, TK, I want to go ahead to you and ask you about this next game. It might be our game of the week, Jackson Center at Fairlawn. This first contest, Fairlawn won that 54-49, again back on December 23rd. And if it wasn't for Jackson Center, TK, only scoring 2 points in the entire third quarter, it might have had a little bit different outcome. Who do you see winning this one on Friday?
Well, as you said, Craig, yeah, it was 54-49. Since then, Jackson's gone 6-3, played pretty well, but still not quite getting enough out of the rest of that group. It's mainly Wildermuth, which we expected coming into the season. We knew that. The key was how much can the rest of that team do. Plattfoot came up with 16 against Bakkens, showed a little life there. but I don't think it's going to be enough. Fairlawn right now 14-2, 7-2 as Ken showed up on the board. An impressive team this year, averaging wins by 24 points. They are getting those points out of the rest of the team. Something we talked about again at the beginning of the season. Who's going to support Lessing? Well, Hickman's supporting him now. Keyshawn Johnson's supporting him now. The Bradigans are supporting him now. He's got a team around him, and they're making people feel it. They're 7-0 since Russia beat them. They have to be the hottest team in the Shelby County League right now, and I don't think Jackson Center going in there Friday night is going to be able to do much, especially if Fairlawn gets on a roll early. It'll be over pretty fast. Looking back last year at this point, Fairlawn was 11-7, 4-4. Just a huge growth in that team. What we thought would happen has happened, and they're a heck of a team right now.
I agree. I think Lessing is laser focused right now, and I agree with what you said, TK, about the rest of the team supporting him. Luke Hickman, all those guys know their role in that team, and I think Fairlawn's a real dangerous team right now.
Absolutely. They're scoring lots of points. They're scoring them in bunches, and they score them quick. So, I know Jackson Center plays great defense. Scott Elkert's going to have his team ready to defend, but boy, they got a lot of weapons, and when you've got limited strength, limited depth on your team like Coach Elkert does, I think Fairlawn's just going to be way too much to handle, especially in the hangar.
Yeah, you look at last Saturday, Jackson Center played New Bremen team, a New Bremen team that only has maybe one win this season, and went into overtime with them. And I read the comments from Coach Elkert in the paper, and I know he said the record is deceiving. They play extremely hard, and I'm sure that's the case. But you got to kind of wonder where Jackson Center's at right now.
That's right.
So, all right, one more game to talk about, Heavy D. I want to ask you about that Russia at Botkins game. And, of course, Russia won this game fairly easily at Russia, but as Ken mentioned at the top of the show, always a tough place to play at Botkins. And last year, all I remember, it was the last game of the regular season. You had Botkins at 2-9. You had at Russia at 9-2. And if I remember correctly, Russia really struggled in that game.
Yeah, we've got the exact same scenario going on right now, Craig, with records. Russia's coming into the game 8-1 in the league. Botkins at 1-9. They last met on December 23rd, and Russia took care of business by 18. But don't look for Botkins to roll over. We're going into their court. Luke Bourbon's got a hot hand right now. The Botkins, the Trojans are actually 3-3 in their last 6 games, so don't take these guys lightly. Coach Meyer will have them ready to play.
The part about Russia, I thought they had a good weekend last week and beat Anna, the important game. They beat Anna, a league game on Friday night, and then lost a tough one to Versailles on Saturday. Mostly because they couldn't make their free throws. They were 6 for 15 from the line. I saw where Coach Cadonier mentioned that could cost them some time, and it certainly did on Saturday.
Absolutely, and I think Coach Meyer's definitely going to have his Trojans ready to play, Craig. But I think Coach Cadonier is going to have the Raiders ready to play. It's their only game this week. I think it's their first single weekend they've had probably since the first of the year. I think he's going to have his kids focused strictly on Botkins, and I look for the Raiders to be too much for the Trojans over there, even on Botkins court. They had great play last week from Drew Poling off the bench. Daniel Kearns continues to play well as Dylan Cadonier's just been shooting the lights out for the Raiders. So I think the Raiders are going to be too much. They're strong inside. They're getting good outside shooting from Daypor and Cadonier. Like I said, Raiders will roll again.
Yeah, if you want to look at a positive if you're a Raiders fan too, the 4 losses they have, 3 of them are against Division III teams. You had St. Henry, you had Anna, and then you had Versailles. Right. And I guess you throw the Minster loss in there against a Division IV team. But losses to quality opponents, if there's any such thing as a good loss, I guess those are probably good losses to a higher division team.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for the first half of our show, but stay right there because when we come back, we're going to talk some more boys basketball, only this time old boys basketball with Sheriff John Lenhart.
Stage at the leaving van. Music starts at 8 o'clock. You can find us here every Wednesday night. It's usually the same cats every week, but I can tell you all their names. A teacher cat and a junkie, all waiting for time to play. Everybody here's got something that we're trying to leave behind. We're all a little broken, looking for a place to hide. Get no answers, don't ask any questions. We're all here just looking for a high. And we're all beautifully broken here tonight.
Welcome back to the second half of Fish Report Live. Before the break, we were talking some current boys basketball. Ken, now we're going to go back a little bit, and a piece of history died on Monday night when they officially closed the old Jackson Center gym. Not too many of those places around anymore, and I wanted to ask, I know you're a little older than I am, a few years, but ever get a chance to play in that old Jackson Center gym?
Actually, I did, Craig. I remember going into that gym, playing in the junior high days, and even my fondest memories of that gym, Craig, have to be always rushing to get there, because it seemed like every time we got there, our buses had to leave late, and we were always came running in at about 4:20 or whatever it was, 10 minutes before the game started. So, but yeah, just it's sad to see these gyms go. They were just a lot of fun, and it's still a lot of fun to play in those gyms, shoot around on the weekend or what have you, and kind of sad to see them go. But yep, it's the new times, and everybody's building bigger and better schools and building bigger gyms, and so we got to get rid of something.
You know, my father-in-law actually played in that same gym, that Jackson Center gym, back in the late 60s, and my son actually got a chance to play in that gym last year as a fifth grader, and my father-in-law actually hadn't been to that gym in a lot of years, got a chance to go back and watch his grandson play in there. So that was pretty special with grandpa and grandson in there in the same gym that actually he set a couple records in and still holds a couple records in. And one guy I know that actually played in that gym is our next guest. He is a former Jackson Center basketball player and the current Shelby County Sheriff. We welcome John Lenhart to the show. Sheriff, welcome to Fish Report Live, and thanks for joining us.
Well, I appreciate being on here. It's very good to talk to you fellas and about such a neat subject.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Ken and I were just talking about the closing of your old gymnasium there in Jackson Center on Monday night. Sheriff, you got any good memories of that gym, or were you happy to see it go?
Well, no. A lot of good memories in there. Obviously, we had a very good Saturday League program, which is 4th and 5th and 6th grades. When we started off years ago playing in there, and I played my whole high school career in there, and my kids played a lot of their years in there. The new gym was built in the early 80s, and then, of course, the old gym built in 28 was used primarily for junior high and that sort of thing.
Well, those gyms are so much smaller than today's, and there's an old saying, they were hanging from the rafters. Is that where the term comes from? Little gyms like that when they used to pack them?
Absolutely. Out of the wall, there was a line there about 3 or 4 inches in the wall. So when you took the ball quote out of bounds, you were standing about half in the stadium and half out.
Sheriff, hi, this is Ken, and I got to ask you about some of the individual battles you had back in the day in that gym, in particularly with Russia Center back then, who you said you had some great memories playing against. Could you tell us a little story about the guy from Russia that you played against?
Denny and I were competition in high school against. Always made this statement, and it is absolutely true. Donnie Ware was our center, and he's a great big guy, and we always play. You would throw the ball into Donnie, and then you'd cut on the inside in the paint. He never threw it back, and I said the only time he ever threw it back, we were playing in the regional semifinals or finals, I guess it was, and I threw the ball to him. We were playing Sabina, and a guy named Phil Snow. I missed the bunny. He threw it back, and after the game, he said, "What? Wait, how could you miss the bunny?" And I got the rebound and made it. I said, "Donnie, we played ball 6 years together. I've been playing this play for 6 years. You threw me the ball." And I said, the first time I ever got it back, I didn't know what to do with it. But when we was talking about Denny, in my career of several years in high school and varsity, Denny York, the center of Russia, probably threw me the ball more accidentally than my own center did. and I've said that several times, and Denny agreed. Yeah.
Sheriff,
Those were some good years, yes.
Sheriff, I got to ask you, I'm sure Shelby County League basketball back then was very good, just like it is today and just like it has been for years. What other names from other county schools can you remember playing against that were significant contributors to some of the rivals of the Jackson Center Tigers?
Oh, I obviously, in the Shelby County League back then, as it is this day, 50 years later, really competitive. Fort Laramie was always good. Bodkins, Anna was exceptional always. Houston, but always good. And the other thing I think about when we think about those years, there was no three-point play, no question about that. And every time there was a tie-up, a loose ball on the floor, you jumped the ball. You didn't take it out. And the same way with every quarter you tip off. But it was totally different, and it is a lot faster game today, and in my opinion, much better, obviously, too.
Sheriff, right now on our screen, we're watching some highlights of the Botkins versus Houston game in 1966. And, one thing I noticed when watching this video is the fact that the defenders do not touch the offensive players whatsoever. How has that changed? Because today, all you see is there's contact all the time.
Oh, yeah, the contact, I don't know how to explain that. If you touched somebody back then, you would have had a foul. There's no question about it. You're talking about the Russia gym or the smaller gyms. That is one thing I forgot to mention. Russia gym was probably one of the smaller gyms, and the middle court, that circle actually overlapped the foul shooting on each end. I had one of my best games ever over there. I was thinking about that the other day when we were talking. Had 25 points there, and I hate to admit this, but I didn't even start that game. The coach was mad at me. I might have taken off and went rabbit hunting that day and on a Thursday and missed practice.
Well, speaking of good games, Sheriff, we did a little research from that 1963 season, and while you had several teammates that scored more points than you did, you were actually second in Shelby County that year in free throw percentage at almost 75%. Was that your secret weapon then, getting to the line? Yeah,
I actually, that was one of my better strengths is shooting foul shots. I tell a story about one of my other persons I had competition with in my own school was Roger Diedrich. He and I would shoot foul shots in practice for a stick of gum. And I just told him the other year, probably a couple of years ago, I just run out of chewing gum because I would beat him on a regular basis. But no, the top of the key and the foul shot was where I predominantly did my best shooting right there.
Sheriff, I got to ask you, 1963, you were one of the stars on the Jackson Center team that finished state runner-up that year. Tell us a little bit about that year, some memorable moments, and your trip to Columbus. How was it?
Unbelievable. As we talked about, the gymnasiums were very small, and you played in front of 300, maybe 350 in any one of the gyms in Shelby County. And there was a county championship. You had to win the county championship to get out to the, what we call sectional finals, district then, and regional. But no, a fantastic journey and lots of games to get there. The other thing that I think about in that setting, there were 1,200 and some schools in Ohio at that time, and there were two divisions, an A and a double A. And of course, we were a small school. So we played in the smaller school bracket. But I remember bringing the ball out the first game of the state tournament in St. John's Arena. And you know, we never even practiced on that floor. We practiced someplace else, and then we went there and you know, brought the ball out, and there was like 12,000 plus people there. And I remember turning around talking to Gary Gerke, who was right behind me, and I mean, it was humbling for a farm boy from in the middle of a cornfield in Shelby County to play in a place like that. And as I brought the ball out, there's a little step up on St. John's. Jerry Gerke was behind me and fell. So we slowed it down a little bit, but oh my goodness, that was fantastic. And the league then is as tough as it is now. We lost 3 games that year before we got in the state tournament, and the guy that I guarded made the last second shot to beat us. But we lost 4 games by a total of 11 points, and the toughest team we ever played was probably Lormy and Anna in our area here.
You know that going to St. John's there, that whole scene you described there, John, it reminds me of the movie Hoosiers. It kind of sounds like Hoosiers.
Absolutely, it was, and you know, it of all the things that the good Lord has blessed me with, that is certainly one that certainly one that I remember, and it is exactly like the Hoover story. And you know, the difference now, there's 600 schools in 4 divisions, so you get some idea. The guy that I was guarding that made the last second shot, quite honestly, he has haunted me for years. The people that make baskets, he was from that school over there, Jefferson Dresden. And my wife over the years has bought a lot of those baskets. And so I get the opportunity to get beat up by him about $100 every year for the last 40 years.
Sheriff, listen, I got one more question for you, and then we'll let you go. You know, you're busy keeping our county safe over here, and us folks over here in Russia and throughout Shelby County. First of all, very much appreciate that. You do a great job. Your staff does a great job, so thank you very much.
We're honored to serve you. You know, Russia people are good to us, and you're a really easy community. You have very few problems. I had a call from one of your constituents today about the new golf cart licensing and the 4-wheelers. So one of these days we want to talk about that, and if we got time on your show, and I'll bring you up to speed on what that new law is, the licensing and so forth. But now I attend your town council meetings on the second Wednesday of the month, and you guys got a great community, and you take good care of yourselves over there.
Well, thank you. Do you get a chance to attend any local basketball games anymore?
All the time. Yeah, I try to catch boys and girls all over the county, and really enjoy that. And it's fun. I run into some of the folks that I used to play sports against. Another one of your people over there is Denny Monin. I always call him the Maine Frog. Played against him, and we talk sports a lot every time we get together.
All right. Well, listen, Sheriff, we appreciate you coming on the show. It's great hearing from you, catching up on some of those old memories. As Ken and I said, it was kind of sad to see that Jackson Center gym closed because there's not too many of those around anymore. But, again, thanks for joining us on the show, and look forward to talking to you sometime soon.
All right. Good. Thanks for having me. You guys got a good thing going over there. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right. That was Shelby County Sheriff and former Jackson Center basketball player John Lenhart. Always fun to talk to the sheriff, Ken, and who knows, maybe next week we'll talk about golf carts.
Yeah, we might be. Sounds like he wants to fill us Russia people in on the laws of the golf carts. So who knows? Yeah, we'll get him over on a town council meeting. One of the two. All right. Well, let's get back to the sound room again and check in with our poll question tonight, guys. We were talking about old gymnasiums. I'll have Ken read the poll question again, and TK, you can fill us in on the results. Which one of these old Shelby County gyms was the toughest to win in for the visitors? What are our listeners saying out there? Was it Botkins, Fort Loramie, Jackson Center, or Russia? TK, what are the telemetrics saying back here?
Well, he's checking the telemetrics. Let me flash up the old Fort Loramie locker room so we can contemplate that.
That looks a little scary, guys.
Yeah, that's skeptical.
That's no longer, but that was courtesy of Jack Hoyne sent us that picture, so appreciate that. But what do you got, TK?
All right, I haven't been around to see all these gyms in the area, but I know that a lot of them were tough to play in, and our viewership says that by 50% to 45, Botkin's the kitchen, correct?
The kitchen.
The kitchen. I remember the kitchen very well because they had like a tile floor. It wasn't
Slippery.
a wood floor.
Slippery
tile floor. That's right. I
Kitchen
remember the
over Rushi.
Rushi kids used to pour Pepsi on an old rag and set it in front of the scores table, and before they'd check into the game, they'd step on their Pepsi.
Those are great stories. Now, you don't get that these days.
That's true story.
Yeah.
True story.
Well, you don't get those stories any day with these new gyms. You have to go to the old gyms to hear stuff like that.
So you step on a new floor with Pepsi today, they're liable to kick you out of the gym because you're going to ruin their floor.
Well, that's great stuff, and we want to thank again Sheriff John Lenhart for being on the show tonight. Ken and I and the crew, we're going to be back again next week, maybe talking about golf carts. But until then, have a great rest of the week, everyone, and good night.
Hanging at the fish report. 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 For your latest news in high school sports, tune in to the fish report. Don't need no bed, don't need no pull when you tune in to the fish report.